Okay, so this is a review for UK Film Review of the indie feature film The Devil's Instrument. It's written and directed by Adam B. Sargent, and it stars Austin Fletcher, Corey Spaulding, Jordan Bryan, and Ali Ledford in a, I would say, sort of psychological thriller feel with some horror elements there, but it's not overtly horrific. And it's a very tense piece that does well with the indie filmmaking and combines a lot of great elements without tripping itself up by trying to do too much. So the story is of a famous novelist called Marcus Cole, who is chatting with, it's played by Austin Fletcher, who's chatting with a character called Damon, depending on how you pronounce it, and who's played by Corey Spaulding. Now it becomes clear that Marcus has done a deal, maybe for his soul, but also potentially the souls of his family, in order to gain fame and success as a novelist. And he's now had something like 9 or 10 best-selling novels, and is should be really loving all of that success because it's what he wanted. But it becomes quite clear that Marcus is looking to renege on that deal, do what he can to get him and his family out of that. Perhaps he's become less selfish and has realised that actually the lives of his family and are more important to him than those things. So over the course of the film, we see this very tense standoff between two characters, and obviously Damon's quite sort of slick and witty, but also has this kind of formidable evil presence behind him that you don't think, okay, yeah, it's just sort of bubbling away. We see things escalate. A colleague of Marcus's bursts into the room, and then they have to kind of deal with it, and Damon gives him a potential option to help with what he's trying to achieve that would potentially be sad for for that person. Other characters turn up later on. There's a really great performance actually by Ali Ledford. I just want to shout her out. Don't really want to ruin who her character is, but she steals the show, to be honest. She comes in, she's such a great presence, really adds depth to the film, and does contribute a great deal to the enjoyment of the piece. The whole film is set within one location, and it's all very darkened, so your focus is really on the characters and what they're saying, and the sort of tension that's building between these two really interesting pieces. And everything feels like a chess board, which actually is kind of like a metaphor, which does actually kind of get mentioned a bit later. It does feel like that. It feels like they're trying to read each other and trying to make a move, and based on what they've got to do, what they're trying to achieve, and the best way to get there without one of them slipping up. So it does feel really intense, really great in terms of that atmosphere, which is created by Sargent and the cast. As I said before, the limitations of the film would probably put a lot of people off in terms of there is just one location. They're not trying to give you lots of backstories. There's no flashbacks to what the character's done with the success and fame, or even any earlier meetings between the two. It's all just present, real time. You've got everything happens on screen, and largely just seeing how it escalates and how each tries to outmaneuver the other is really interesting. I would say at times it does kind of slip into over theatricality. It feels a bit on the nose. There's some lines of dialogue that they don't land very well. It's a bit wooden, and I think maybe it was a time span thing and they needed to get the shots, or they needed to move on. And I think that some of the scenes could have been slightly less theatre-like, more film-based, because you've got this intense standoff, so you need that believability. It did, at times it felt like they were reading a script. So I think that was definitely sort of negative for me, but once you're absorbed into the atmosphere, I think you kind of forgive it a bit more. And what I really liked was the themes of the film. You're dealing with this whole kind of like good, bad, righteousness, but also redemption. You know, characters trying to redeem themselves whilst everything's going on, and life's getting even more crazy just within this scene and this film. So there's lots to unpick. There's lots for audiences to enjoy and feel that actually you get a lot from such simple ingredients. You know, just characters on screen chatting. So yeah, it's one to check out. As I said, I think it's a good showcase of what you can do if you're sort of like a bold indie filmmaker, something that you could, anyone could kind of try. I'm not saying you get to this level. Sargent does show himself to be a very capable director. It's very efficient with the way that things are filmed. And I was really impressed by the lighting and the sound design. It all created this great atmosphere. I just wished it was slightly more believable, and then the performances are maybe a little bit more nuanced. I do want to say though that isn't to take away from Fletcher, Spalding, Brian, and obviously I mentioned how great Ali Ledford was. They are good, and for the majority of the film, there's lots of really good scenes and sequences. It's just there were times where it felt like maybe it was a bit rushed, or maybe they just wanted to get that scene done and they had other things, or they couldn't come back to it or something like that, and you got that feeling of like, oh, is that the best version of that scene that was available? Because it does feel a little bit put together. I don't want to ruin the end. I'm trying to really not ruin the end, but at the end there is a section, and the film does let itself down a little bit. It wasn't quite capable of doing what it tried to do. Again, I can't spoil it, so there's a section. So if you watch the film, let me know. There's a bit where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really, really slipping into melodrama now, and it just feels a little bit cheapened because it was so tense and atmospheric beforehand. But that shouldn't take away from what is generally a really enjoyable indie film, and I love the idea. I think it's great. I think the way that the film takes all these twists and turns is commendable. And I'd love to see what Adam B. Sargent does next in terms of indie filmmaking, because if this is sort of a fairly early project, then yeah, I can imagine great things to come.